Get inside the house, get inside. Go! Hard time, right?
Нас хтось на вулиці. Заходьте, забігайте, блядь!
Still moment. All right, get inside. Okay, come on. Get inside, get inside. Guys, get inside. How do I even explain myself? To explain why I lived the last decade bouncing from one war to the next. For instance, I'm eager to tell you about Iraq as a guerrilla living in the tunnels, and how for a reason I still don't know, that was the happiest time of my life. Or maybe I should start with Ukraine, where I first saw what real war is, where I found out who I really was. Or maybe I should start with my brothers, the ones who risked their lives for me, were there in my toughest times, sat up with me when sleep wasn't possible.
I'm still shaking regardless.
Should I tell you when I was the most scared, or when I laughed the hardest, when I found courage, and when I didn't? I really don't know the right place to start, and maybe it just makes sense that I start at the only place that I can. Because nobody wakes up one day and decides to do this. There's always something before, a crack that opens, a question that doesn't go away. Coming. Everybody's story is different. Everybody's war is different. It's clear. But a soldier's story isn't just his own, it's the sum of all the men he stood beside. And I've stood beside more than I can count. And each one of those teams, squads, companies left a mark on me, good or bad, or both. And that question for me was simple. Why didn't I have a father in my life? Why was I born broken, needing 7 surgeries just to stay alive? Why was I promised a growth spurt that never came, only to be towered by middle schoolers even to this day? I used to wonder why I struggled with social anxiety, but looking back now, it's pretty obvious. My answer was plain enough. If I wanted to walk around with my head up, I would have to earn it. There was no changing the unchangeable, but there was one thing I knew I could change, the way I saw myself. In a lot of ways, the Marine Corps became my father. It gave me something to stand up straight for. It gave me a path. And given my size, I knew I'd have to work twice as hard to stand shoulder to shoulder with real Marines. So I started early. Gym sessions every day after school, cold showers in the morning, bike rides constantly, sometimes with no sunscreen. I also loved reading, but all I read were autobiographies from combat veterans. If I toughened up my mind, maybe the rest would follow. The Corps wasn't just a goal, it became my life. And then I shipped out.
Now, boy! Recon Crew Depot, Paris Island, South Carolina, and you're just taking the first step toward become a member of the War Spies Fighting Force, the United States Marine Corps!
95 recruits, platoon 3069 India Company. It's not something you forget, no matter how cliche. I was a good recruit. I listened. I gave everything. I shot expert on rifle qual. I was even one of the Ironman recruits on the final PFT. But it didn't take long for me to find out why the Marine Corps prefers taller guys. I couldn't reach the bar on the obstacle course. I nearly passed the intermediate swim test, but on the last part, you had to keep moving forward while walking on the pool bottom. My feet didn't touch, so they booted me. And the hikes were the worst. Pure exhaustion. The first hike we had was 500 meters on a track of dry sand. Dozens of recruits were passed out in the dirt, and we'd step over them, use them as turn markers. And by the end of the hike, I was holding back tears, unable to feel my legs.
If you ain't dying, you're hoping. Aye, sir. We hope till we die.
Aye, sir.
For me, it wasn't a hike, it was a ruck run. The pace was set by the front man, a full head taller than me. But somehow, through the skin of my teeth, I passed. My effort paid off. Some drill instructors didn't even remember my name at the end of training. That's how little trouble I gave them. but it hit me fast. If boot camp was this hard, my infantry MOS training, which is coming up next, and the real job that waited after, wasn't gonna get any easier. So there I was, a Marine at last. Not the big guy I recognized in the recruitment posters, still 5'4", 116 pounds, but for the first time in my life, I felt real confidence. I wrapped the Corps around every part of me. That weak kid was gone, or so I thought. I shipped out for infantry school, thinking the title alone meant respect. I learned quick, you prove yourself every day or they break you. The hikes nearly killed me. I failed most of them. My size was always my curse, too small for the weight I had to carry. Halfway through, I blew out my ear on the range. Half deaf, tinnitus forever. No sick call, but nobody cared. 2 years in, my body gave out for good. A traumatic brain injury that I sustained from a concussion, vertigo, seizure precursors, and a nearly broken back from all the weight. I asked if I could have a different job, but I was denied. And the cherry on top, being an infantryman with a hearing aid, I can't be deployed to a combat zone. There is now no use for me to be in the Marine Corps, so I sought after a medical discharge. I didn't get that, but I did get an honorable discharge. Still, this was not what I had planned. 2 years out of a 4-year contract, out early, I'm now 20 years old, still a Marine, but now I'm back in the world that I was taught to hate. I tried college, working at Apple retail, normal stuff. I worked for a bit. Around that time, I started this YouTube channel where I spoke about boot camp and I spoke about training in the Marine Corps, but that's when my old squad found me. I distinctly remember after a year in Apple, I was in the back and I checked my phone and my heart sunk as I saw all the hate comments filling my YouTube, my Instagram, my Facebook. All the messages were hate. My squad, my friends, my brothers didn't have my back anymore. In fact, they were working to revoke my title as Marine. They said I didn't belong anymore. It burned. And maybe they were right. So that week, as I was scrolling Instagram, I saw a video of these foreign fighters on a rooftop fighting ISIS. Doing the job that I wished so bad I could do. They had joined the YPG in Syria. So I texted them, how do I join? They gave me the email to the Syrian guy that's the recruiter. I messaged him that night, and that morning, got a message back. He told me, this is what we're about. This is what is expected of you. Buy the plane ticket if you're up for it. And I did. You know, it was a long walk that night as I told my parents my plans. There was a lot of tears. There was a lot of pain of what the hell is their son doing. But I wanted you to understand, I was hurt. This was my life. I put everything on the line to be a Marine, a successful Marine, and I failed. I failed straight up. I was in a very, very dark place that I didn't know how to get out of. And I've heard this story many times before in many obituaries of my friends, and I didn't want to be another statistic. My way to deal with this was to go to Syria. So I did. When I landed in Iraq, I already decided my life didn't matter that much anymore. I didn't care if the guy on the other end of that email was real or fake. I didn't care if I got kidnapped or shot on sight. Part of me hoped I would. I needed to throw myself at something, prove to myself and everybody back home that I was worth the uniform I had worn. If I couldn't be a Marine the way I had dreamed, maybe I could die a better man out here. They told me to check into a cheap hotel, and then a car came a couple hours later. Next thing I knew, I was in a cold, safe house with a bunch of other volunteers. A few of them were there for the revolution. A few just wanted a good story, adventure, and me. Just a person with something left to settle. I turned 22 at that safe house. The Kurdish man in charge of the safe house gave me a coat for Syria because he knew I was going to be cold, and he gave me a couple cakes. I was instantly met by the Kurdish hospitality I was eager to experience. About a week later, they smuggled us across the Tigris River in the dark. Engines were off. The river was flowing to the south pretty strong. There's drones overhead somewhere, but it was a point of no return. I jumped in the boat with other volunteers as well as some YPG dudes with AKs. I welcomed it. We got to the other side after a couple minutes, and the guy from the email shook my hand on the far bank and drove me straight to the academy. Just like that, I was under somebody's flag again. When I got to the academy, they knew I was a Marine, so they had me train some of the new guys that didn't have any military experience. But my mind wasn't really in it. I wanted the real fight. One night while I was on guard duty, it was raining, One of my roommates came up. He'd been there for a couple months by now, and he went off and shot himself. His last words were to me. They were kind. And then he was gone. I'd never seen death like that up close. But instead of pulling me back from the YPG, it pulled me in deeper. During those nights, I kept replaying what my gunny had told me back in the Corps, with tears in his eyes. You think you've made it? You don't make it just because you're a Marine. You don't make it when you deploy. You don't make it when you pull a trigger. You make it when you're 6 feet under in Arlington. That's when you make it. I didn't believe him back then. I was 18, I just became a Marine, but now standing in Syria, I realized I've been chasing death ever since.
Ready when you are.
Because we were expecting an invasion pretty soon, we started with military training first. We shot old AKs, Dragunovs, RPGs, all the bad guy guns. Days were training. Nights were Kurdish lessons and talks about democratic confederalism, the revolution, but my mind wasn't there. It was on the foreign volunteers who'd roll back every weekend, filthy and bleeding. That's how I met Zoffer, one of my best friends out there. I was cooking dinner one night, he shows up with a bullet through his right hand. I reach out to shake his hand, but we end up shaking with the left. He had no ego, he had no show, he was just a man doing his job, and I looked up to him for that. Same with Rashid, a Japanese Korean American, with this quiet steadiness about him. He never said much, but he just knew he got it. The kind of man I was eager to be, not caring about what people thought about me. At the end of the academy, my old Marine Corps unit found out I was there. It was a weird twist. They were deployed to Syria too. Overnight, the same guys who had mocked me called me brother again. It worked. I'd come all this way to earn the respect back, and that felt good. But it kind of poisoned everything. Finally, I got pushed to the international unit. But before I could get my piece of the fight, ISIS fell. The last volunteers came back from that operation as heroes. We clapped, we cut cake, but I walked silently out of the kitchen and I tossed my slice of cake in the river. I didn't want to swallow something I hadn't earned. Most days blurred into stale bread, lentil soup that I couldn't digest. We lost a lot of weight during those 7 months. We dug tunnels, waited for drones and aircraft to pass. We put out fires, ISIS started. We went out to chase them, but could never find them. The big fight that I pictured never came. The commander saw our morale dying, so he sent us across all of Rojava. We saw Sarikania, Kobani, Manbij. We even got to swim in the Euphrates River. On the way back, we stopped by Geraspi, where we heard Turkish shells hitting the fields to start fires, and then as we were driving back to our base, ISIS was torching up the rest of the fields. Both Turkey and ISIS were trying to starve us to death. While all this was happening, about once a month, I would talk to my tiny YouTube audience, just like 1,000 people.
Alright guys, welcome back. Today's video, I think
It was a journal, but I made one slip. I mentioned the volunteer who had shot himself for 5 seconds. My commander found out, he made me delete it, and said it's bad for the organization. Fair enough. But about a month later, when I was at the range, 7 months in, I was shooting the Chia and Zagros homemade sniper rifles. And the commander shows up and tells me to pack my bag. So we drove back to the same river, the same pitch black boat, same dark ride back to Iraq. Then a flight home. In the end, Syria showed me exactly who I was. A man chasing death for a pat on the back from whoever. I never learned the language, never cared about the revolution that fed me. I let my ego waste a chance to really belong and experience. But Syria taught me something else too. I learned to live with nothing. Stale bread, cold floors, extreme environments, the bare minimum. And that stuck with me. By the time I came home, I knew I'd never live normal again. So I took that lesson, and for the next 7 months, I built a van home, my rolling safe house. When I got back home from Syria, I didn't have much to come back to, except an idea. Living simply, moving freely, no walls but the ones I built myself. I got paid about $70 a month out there, so I came back broke. I sold everything I owned, my car, my clothes, and I worked for my uncle doing yard work, odd jobs, and digging for every dollar. Eventually, I scraped up enough together to buy a beater van. My stepdad, who's an engineer, the kind of father who steps up when your own plans fall short, helped me build it out. 7 months it took us of cutting plywood, running wires that always seemed to short out, fixing plumbing leaks, piecing it together until it felt like a small home on wheels. But the whole time, my mind was split. I was back in the US, safe, but my friends in Syria were still there. Not only that, but a month after we'd finished off ISIS, the Turks came rolling in, taking the same villages that I'd just been at a month prior. I found myself scrolling on my phone, and depression hit hard. It really did, especially knowing that they were in danger. I had left 3 months too soon. Seeing the pictures of me with my friends, I felt it every single night while I lay there in the half-finished van. After the 7 months, I was finally able to hit the road.
We're done.
At the same time, COVID hit too. So I didn't have much of a budget. I just ate cold ramen. I used coins to buy gas, but I knew I could figure it out after my time in Syria. The first stop I had was Kansas. Zafar had just made it back too. He was one of the only guys from Syria I could look in the eye and not have to explain anything.
Oh my god.
I blew off every plan I had made, all the promises I told my friends once I completed the van, just to be around somebody who understood. Then I really left. I went out west, into the desert, hiking around Arizona. I'd park behind Walmarts or sleep on side roads that looked quiet enough. I drank too much, I ate like crap, and I pretended that the lonely hiking and the seclusion was fixing what I had brought back with me from Syria. And then one day in Texas, somebody I'd met had a brother who turned out to be a videographer. So I asked him if he could film me doing a van tour. The next couple days, I put it all together on iMovie on my iPhone, and I posted it. The next morning, it had 1 million views. That was my first viral video. That one video saved my van journey. I was in desperate need of an expensive repair. I went from 10,000 subscribers to 60,000 in just a week. COVID made the world feel like a cage, so everybody wanted to see how to escape it. And there I was, the broke example that you could.
Lights.
But a year in, the truth was obvious. I was overweight. I was drinking too much, nights got longer, colder. I look at myself in the mirror and see somebody who traded one battlefield for another, and he was losing this one. That's when I reached out to the YBS in Iraq, the Yazidi fighters, cousins to the same Kurdish units I had joined in Syria. I'd do it right this time. I'd do it for Rashid. Not because he told me to, but because the way he carried himself. That stuck with me. I wanted to see life through his eyes. So I drove the van back to my family's house. I hugged everybody goodbye, packed the same gear I carried through to Syria, and I stepped on that plane and I left. Unprepared or not, it didn't matter. I'd do anything I could to live out there the right way. I wasn't gonna be posting on YouTube, not gonna be posting on Instagram. I was gonna live out there like Rashid did. I wanted to do it right this time, and I knew I was going there for the right reasons. So I landed. It was the same old routine. It was a cheap hotel, I waited for the word, and then I got smuggled in. But halfway there, Iranian forces stopped us. The taxi driver and I were surrounded by armored MRAPs, bored Iranian soldiers flexing their authority. They brought me to a small base, sat me on the floor, and they tried to convert me to Islam overnight. I stayed polite, I drank their chai, but I said no. By sunrise, they were done with us, and they dropped me off a little bit closer to Shengal. They waved me off as I stood there in the desert, and a couple minutes later, a beat-up white Hilux came bouncing down the road. It was a stark difference. No armor, no fancy insignias, just grit. I hopped in, and just like that, I was back in it. They dropped me off at the base just in time for dinner. And that's where I met Bajos, an older Spaniard, a steady dude, hardworking, and I instantly felt safer. And then there was Suresh, young, soft-spoken, Spanish too, fluent in Kurdish. He was the link between us and all the other Kurds. And believe it or not, the rest of the team was Spanish. I think there was 7 or 8 of us total.
Surprise, please.
They're hardworking, hilarious, the kind of people you'd want to live next to for the next 8 months. Which was how long the contract was. The first night, I slept in the tunnel. It was just a slice of the massive 300-kilometer network we live and hide in. It was cold, our voices echoed down all the tunnels, it was damp, but it was better than the desert heat above, and definitely safer than being spotted by a Turkish drone, which flew over us 24/7.
Is that a bomb or is that a jet or something?
The second night, they welcomed me properly, an initiation ritual. Bahus and Suresh tossed an IED outside my room, and I woke up to a cloud of dust. Couldn't even see my hands in front of my eyes. They yelled Intishar, which means evacuate. I scrambled across the floor to grab my kit, and I ran out to their voices. I didn't know this was an initiation, so I yelled for all the rest of the dudes to come up quick, and once we gathered, we walked down the tunnels for an hour, and then 2 hours, and then 3 hours. And then finally, to the end, where there's a ladder. We walked up it right at the break of dawn. This was my new normal. I just learned what Shengal was all about. A few days in, we got word that ISIS might break through again, with Turkish jets helping them. So we packed up all our bags. I didn't need to. It was already packed from 4 days ago. And we piled everything we could, including the RPGs with no safety caps, on my lap.
Know your place, bitch.
We laughed as the RPGs would bang against the windows. We drove for about 20 minutes until we got to the mountain tunnel base. It was flattened just a year ago by Turkish airstrikes. Our job? Dig it out, fix it, make it a home in 10 days because the invasion's coming. We worked day in, day out, scavenging old batteries off the tunnel floor with the last remaining light in our headlamps. We cleared rubble, we ran power lines up and down the tunnels, we rigged up pipes, cleaned up rat nests. And for lunch, we'd climb out of the tunnels and we'd sit up on top of the mountain and eat some cold ramen that was doused with year-old water bottles that we found half buried in rubble. By the end of those 10 days, we had done everything. We had wired the lights, the plumbing was there, we built a kitchen, we got the shower working, a bathroom.
Good lights.
It was filthy, miserable, but it was still beautiful. It was a work in progress. Between jobs, I knew the one person I want to follow, Suresh. He'd take me to meet his Kurdish friends he had met throughout the last couple of years he had spent here. Men, women, all hardened by years of surviving this fight. I'd sit down with them, bring out my notebook, and write down all the words that they said to learn Kurdish, and then they'd pass me smokes. I didn't really want to take them, but I took them anyway, because that's how you blend in. Anything the Kurds did, I wanted to do as well. And after the 10 days, false alarm. Didn't happen, but we were prepared. And we lived week by week, just like that. 1 week at the mountain base, on guard, digging, fixing, surviving.
What's up, buddy?
They're still bombing.
They're still bombing. All right, get inside.
And then 1 week down the mountain at the garrison base, just kind of rearming, planning, and pulling guard watch just the same. And other than a couple videos I'd take throughout the day, I didn't touch my phone. I didn't post, I didn't pose, I just worked. And 24/7, the Bayraktars would be above us. Turkish jets would fly by, hunting for movement with their thermal cameras. It would only take one airstrike, and it could turn all of our tunnels to dust, so we stayed ready. And after a couple months, I got good enough in Kurdish that they trusted me to go to their special heavy weapons training. I jumped at it. Dushkas, KPVs, 23mm anti-aircraft weapons. I absorbed everything. I wasn't the shy kid from the Marine Corps or Syria anymore. I had something real behind my eyes now. Not just the experience, but the resolve to use it right. Summer came brutally. It's a rock. We were assigned with our Kurdish unit to spend a month expanding one of the tunnels for a KPV bunker. It was miserable that month.
Sam, I'm gonna send this to the university. Is that the last load? Is that the last load or no?
Yeah. No, I mean, no, there's one more.
There is one.
Yeah. I think that should be the last one.
All right, well, let's get to it.
2 to 3 hours of fire watch a night made it so we only slept about 4. It was too hot to be outside, but it was too claustrophobic to be inside. But nonetheless, we swung our pickaxes all day, all night, hauling rocks on wheelbarrows back to the entrance, dumping it, coming back, over and over and over again. Some of the Kurds who were working with us, who had spent 7 years here, finally cracked. They stole one of our guys' phones. They tried to contact the enemy. We caught them. And then our commanders locked them in a dugout cell. Now our fire watch had a little bit more meaning. But I wasn't them. I did not crack. There was no morale dips. I was doing exactly what I had promised myself, what Rashid would have been proud about. When winter came, Bahu's left for training, Suresh went home, and they made me the foreigner platoon commander for the next month. 10 guys were under me, 4 of them brand new, and they came chasing for action, the same mistake I had made in Syria. So I taught them discipline instead. I showed them what really mattered, staying alive, staying sharp, defending this piece of ground so the Yazidis didn't have another massacre. And then the snow came, and it came down hard. We got locked in. The generator failed. Food runs meant trudging through frozen tunnels for hours, dragging back bags of spoiled vegetables and half-moldy bread. The fridge was full of rats and maggots. We picked around it, cooked what we could, survived. And we were stuck up there for 2 months. Just myself and 2 other guys. And because of that, we had a lot of tasks on our hands. I was in charge of the IEDs that would blow up all of our entrances and ourselves if we were to get overran. I also manned the dushka. I was the medic as well as the team leader, although I did my best to train everybody in everything. And since the snow fell, the Turkish Air Force knew they could find us even easier. The thermal signatures would be brighter and they could see our footsteps. If we stepped outside careless, we'd be followed by an AI Akinci drone or a Bayraktar.
No way.
And there was a lot of them that month. And once my 8-month contract was up, they asked me if I wanted to leave. I told them, no rush, don't worry about it. And I spent the next 5 months after that 8 months in the tunnels. And then finally, my passport was ready. They walked up the mountain through the tunnels, kind of like an index at the end of training in the Marine Corps, and they told me and my buddy, you're going home. So they relieved us with a couple new dudes, and I stepped off into the tunnels, down into the garrison base, and off to the smuggler's house. We spent about a week there, hanging out with the old Kurdish housekeepers. They've been in the fight for decades, so it was pretty fun talking to them. But one night, a couple nights before I left, it happened. We were down at a safe house when the door started rattling. At first we were confused, until the radio crackled to life with a warning. An all-out air raid over all of Shangal. Every position was being targeted.
Yeah, man, those are warplanes. They're bombing.
We were used to the weekly bombings, targeting a position of ours or a commander or the occasional hospital, but this was different. This was an attempt to wipe us off the map. Under the buzz of drones overhead, we slipped out under the open sky, walking down the street as we crossed to an abandoned house. Inside, there were a couple Kurds, one of them on the radio with a police checkpoint just down the road. Then a hit. The curtain snapped to the ceiling as the blast slammed through us. Dust filled our lungs. The checkpoint we were talking to a couple seconds ago rained back down on us in pieces. The radio went dead. A second blast happened 5 minutes later, a double tap. Once again, the curtains went to the ceiling, the blast pressure pushed us against the wall, and the Kurds with us started to panic. But not me. I was calming everybody down. And then, 20 minutes of silence. Just enough time for our nerves to settle. But that's when the biggest bomb of all, a 2,000-pound JDAM, cracked open the earth a kilometer away, erasing the headquarters of YBS. The same building where my passport sat just a week before. And just like that, I had survived my first real close bombing. But instead of feeling hardened or fulfilled by the danger, I just felt clear. I had spent 13 months here for the right reasons. Not to chase combat, not for some rush. I knew it because when the walls shook and the others screamed, I was the one who stayed calm. And this experience, as you know, doesn't define what I did in Iraq. And that's what I had taken from the 13 months living in tunnels, that I had finally done something for real. But my mind at the time wasn't on this realization. It was on my brothers who were up in the operations base still, who I had to unceremoniously leave a week prior. I prayed they had survived, having listened to my directions from the bombings of the past, despite me not being there. Somehow I got some sleep, and when I woke up, we radioed up to them, and they had made it. They were battered, bruised, concussed, but they stayed calm, they stayed put, just like I drilled them, and they all survived. Although I wasn't there, I felt like I had done my job. At this point, it was time for my buddy and I to leave. He left first because he was a little spooked by the airstrikes prior, and then I left a couple days later. I shaved down to a mustache, trying to look local, and I pretended to sleep checkpoint to checkpoint. And it worked, and I walked through the same doors that I walked through 13 months prior. The same hotel, but a couple new volunteers. I'll keep up with them the next couple days, drinking chai with them. Some of them even recognized me from my YouTube channel. I had only posted once that year, but I guess they were watching my YPG videos in the past. And the days kind of went by like that. But every day, around 2 a.m., my buddy would knock on my door, drunk, a shot of vodka in a teacup, and he would talk to me about Ukraine. He told me it's gonna happen. And I laughed him off. Until I didn't. 3 days before my flight home, after an incredibly successful journey finding myself, my buddy knocks on the door, wide-eyed. This time he has 2 cups of vodka. That night, we stayed up in our rooms looking at the live feeds of Kiev, reading up on this, and we both saw the same pattern. A big country stomping out the little guy for a map line. The same old playbook I had just left a week ago. I called my family, sorry, just one more time. And I bought the ticket to Poland with him. The van could wait. Freedom wasn't in the van anyway. It was in the struggle. So, I left for Poland. When I landed in Poland on March 1st, I wasn't ready for how normal the world felt. I'd come straight out of tunnels and Frontlines, so I spent my first night sitting alone outside a hostel I was told to meet up at. But by morning, they woke up and they got me into the lobby and we got to sit down and meet the team. I had heard of many of these guys, I always wanted to meet them, and finally I was with them. All of us had seen the same dirt, Syria, Iraq, and now Ukraine. And while we were heading to the border, we stopped by 511, one of the shops there, and we saw the owner packing all of the stuff from his shop at his own expense into the vans to be sent to Ukraine to go and help the war effort. And it was then that I realized it was the first time in my life I'd ever felt the world come together for one thing. Nobody cared about politics or paychecks. We were just there to unite against evil. When I got to Ukraine, we stopped by Lviv first, and we trained civilians joining a territorial defense unit. Regular people who'd been fixing cars or selling fruit just a week ago. And then after that, I headed over to Kiev right when I was just about to be surrounded. And I remember refreshing the live map, trying to find out, did they take over the train tracks? Because they're only 3 kilometers away. But luckily we got in there, we got the paperwork, and we got out and went over to Mykolaiv, down south. And that's where I did my first mission in Ukraine. A recon job that turned into chaos within minutes. I'd volunteer with my buddy who had spent years in the Ukrainian military before me, as well as a couple other dudes that were not as experienced. On the way to the recon, one of them ND'd in the back of the car with his AK. Instantly, I knew I was lied to. These guys were not special forces veterans. Most of these guys were just civilians that wanted to be taken seriously, no matter if they were prepared or not. But now my life was on the line for them. Just like that, the recon job was called off, and we were sent to the 0 line to assault the enemy. I came out shaking, ears ringing, wondering how I'd survived when the ground around us was erupting into the air. That mission taught me a couple things, and it taught me them very fast. Trust is everything. It doesn't matter how tough you are, how good your kid is. If the man next to you panics, you're done.
Get inside the house. Get inside. We gotta sit down.
Take, for example, this clip that went viral. My buddy and I are balancing each other's fear and panic and confusion as we're being bombarded to finally get into the room.
We gotta get inside.
Huh? Move, move, move!
You good? Let's get inside. Get inside. Go, 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 go.
You can see how we're balancing, reminding each other what the mission is, what we need to do right now. Through the pain, through the panic.
All right. What's going on? Man.
The next thing I learned was if your leader disappears when it's hot, you're alone. You have no reason to be there. But despite that, that team leader taught me an even greater lesson. What a true warrior acts like.
All right.
There are our guys.
Our guy's cool.
Bro, can I move?
He didn't run, he didn't hide, he looked for a job. That stuck with me. And although it didn't go exactly how I had planned, I knew I could do better. I knew I had learned my lesson, both good and bad. You're gonna make mistakes in war. There's nothing that you're gonna do perfectly, but I knew what I needed, a trustworthy team. After that, I went to the SBU in Odessa, where we were trying to catch saboteurs and sympathizers. There was a couple times we'd ride up with balaclavas on, waiting to make entry and arrest this individual, then it was called off. I did that for about a month until I decided I'm ready for the front line again. I feel confident. But I needed to find a unit. And as if God was watching over me right then, an old Marine Corps buddy vouched for me. And it was a good unit. Almost everybody Special Forces background.
Come on, Marine.
So at this point in my life, my Marine Corps experience didn't define me. Matter of fact, my dedication, devotion into making myself a better warrior for the people around me made me somebody that they reached out to bring into the unit. So I joined. We did a lot of missions in that unit. It was an SSO unit, Partisan group. We didn't get paid anything, but we would walk deep into the gray zones to send up drones or do reconnaissance by foot. We'd plant ambushes, we'd plant mines, pull security for other drone operators, and pulling QRF against 20 tanks. I saw what real teamwork was there. No one asked for glory, no one filmed TikToks. You carried your part. You didn't sleep if your buddy was on watch. We would run PT in the morning and do operations in the evening. It was like that. After about 3 months of operating there, half of us decided it's about time we get home. And for myself, after a year and a half straight in war zones, I desperately needed a break. So I went home. I ate real food, I sat on the porch and talked about my experiences, and I met a girl. She was out in Indonesia, and I decided I'm gonna give it a try. So I went there for 4 months, enjoyed my time, but during that time, most of my team who had stayed were injured in the Kharkiv offensive. So I went back again. I had to. But this time as an instructor. I wasn't a single man anymore. I went to TDI, a bunch of guys who knew what it meant to build something that lasts. I stood in front of classrooms with air raid sirens right above us, and I taught the basics: how to stay alive, how to move, how to shoot straight even when you're shaking. And just like the unit I was previously in, where I was invited by one of my Marine Corps peers for my old unit, the founder of TDI and I used to have some beef back when I was in Syria, but he knew I had grown up. It was years since then, and he heard from the peers around me that I did know what I was talking about, and I wasn't the young kid he had remembered from years ago. So he invited me over, which was encouraging. I had grown up. I was 25, 26 at that time, and being an instructor, that work mattered. Some of the boys still send me pictures. They're still alive, holding the line. That's better than any medal I could have ever received. And that's kind of how the next year went. I would go to Indonesia for a couple months, and then I'd come back to Ukraine for a couple months, instructing. But on my third trip to Indonesia, that's where I got hit by betrayal. I've been cheated on multiple times the entire duration of our relationship. I broke up, but it only took me about a day to recover. I went to Vietnam just to breathe. For a minute, I thought I could be normal, until the phone rang one night. 3 of my friends died on the same day. Ethan, Netcheer, Suresh. Ethan, a longtime subscriber of my channel. We were good friends for multiple years, even back when I had less than 10,000 subscribers. He was an instructor with us for a short time. I had invited him over, and he decided he needed to go to the front line with Suresh. They fought together, and they died together. And then there's Netcheer, the one who, after my first mission in Ukraine, took me aside, handed me a cigarette, and told me not to dwell on it. He knew I was shell-shocked. He'd seen that face before. He'd been there. So that night, I hiked up the tallest mountain and I said my goodbye. But it wasn't just the deaths that betrayed me. During this time as well, I learned that Bajos, the commander I looked up to, the one that I still look up to in a lot of ways, had joined the Russian side. That burned me more than any bullet could. I could not stand it. So what should I do again? Of course I go back. No distractions this time. No girl waiting on the phone, just the fight. I went over there, I wanted revenge. I needed vengeance, and I needed to go and prove I had it in me still. I bounced around a couple different units, trying to find one that sparked my interest, specifically looking for trust. I went to an FPV operation, we watched Fabs and Cabs explode down the hill, and at that point, I knew I wanted to be in a drone unit. So then I asked one of my buddies, who was an instructor with me in TDI, who had now joined a drone unit, if I could check out his unit. As soon as I walked in, I saw Artem, and I knew I trusted him. The look on his face, fresh off the front line, muddy still, he was the kind of dude I wanted to be with, including the team leader who was the instructor with me. During the next month or two, as I was getting a contract, I went on multiple operations as a drone pilot. Every single one of them was a nighttime rotation. We would watch with our thermal cameras for any movement and then strike with bombs that we would drop on them or from mortars. There's a lot of stuff that happened then. I did a drone recovery with Artem. I dropped my first bomb with Artem, and we were nearly surrounded, Artem and I. But the moment that cured most of the pain that I had come from back in Vietnam was the moment I helped eliminate 10 Russian soldiers. I first spotted 2 of them walking in the open, and then they met up with a BMP and the rest of a squad that was then picked up by a BMP, which was eliminated by artillery, drones, and mortars. I remember Artem telling me, "You have your first kill." It kind of felt like it. I don't know if it is, but it's enough for me. I got my vengeance. Other than that, we knocked out a couple other Russian soldiers and the exfils. The exfils were never easy.
Let's go. It's far out.
And on the last mission there, I knew that they wanted to switch to FPVs, which was more interesting, but also a bit safer, as they were starting their own families. So I started working on FPVs, partly due to that, but mostly because I was scared. I did not know if I had it in me to continue on. I remember on my last mission, I was with Artem and Alex, Alex's first combat mission, but this time was different. One night, we woke up thinking we were going to be exfilled after a 5-day rotation. But instead, we were told the Russians had pushed 500 meters from our position, where they were only a kilometer the day before, and we were told to stay there, stay put for the next 3 days. I thought I was dead. I started to panic, and I called my team leader saying, "We gotta get out of here. Man, it's getting rough." The situation was getting hot. But my team leader kept me calm, and he didn't belittle me. He talked through the situation, and he helped calm me down. Until it worked. After a couple hours, I was able to perform the next couple days, despite the fear of being overran. And it was on those rotations that I learned the biggest lesson of all: humor.
Yeah, my chest still hurts, dude.
Don't worry. You're gonna die. Don't worry.
If you don't have humor, you're gonna panic. You're not gonna be able to perform on the battlefield. And my team had humor. It was fun.
Where's my helmet? I'm gonna die.
It's going a little too crazy.
And then Alex and I went to make FPVs. But during training on how to go and build these FPVs, before we could even really get started, I was asked by my team leader if I could go and help them dig a position, a new one, since ours was overran. And I knew, for myself, I needed to. I panicked the last mission. It was a little bit of a panic. It was a couple hours long. But I didn't want that to be the last mission that I had. I needed to get out there again and perform well. So I went out there for 2 days straight, with the occasional mortar bombardment, with FPVs and Mavics flying over us. I was able to shoot one down, my first shot in anger actually, which made everybody erupt and cheer, including Chorney, who was later killed on that same position. And I felt I had done my job, no matter how little. My team leader had spent 2 weeks out there, not wanting to ask his team to go build, because he knew how exhausting it was, so he took the burden on himself. So I was glad to at least chip in a little bit. That's when I realized the real fight wasn't just rifles anymore. It was up in the air. So Alex and I got to work building FPVs. They were cheap, they're dirty, and they're deadly. We'd stay up all night soldering away, parts of drones, batteries, and bombs, laying on the ground and plywood tables, and bugs everywhere. A lot of flies, a lot of mosquitoes. But this was a hell of a lot easier than being on the front line, so we kept going. And around this time, I hit 1 million subscribers. One of the big helpers for that was Arnie, who I featured on my channel a lot with his combat footage. I knew he was one of the best FPV pilots, so I asked if he wanted to join our unit, which he was eager to do, and he still is in that unit. He's one of the most experienced people I know on the front line. Injured multiple times, yet never given up. He knows how to use every weapon system you hand in front of him. So I was proud I was able to get him into our team. Alex and I had a lot of help from other people when we were making FPVs. For the duration of a month, we would invite a couple people to teach us how to go and build a working FPV, and then we'd send it out to the guys to fly it. It would fail. And this went on for about 2 times. At this point, Alex and I knew what we had to do. We had to make a repeating device that was propped up on a larger drone and a ground station, able to receive the connection from the repeater to the FPV flying, and that was our new prototype. We would write schematics, we'd have the 25th come over with Oleg and a couple others who would help us day in, day out, making this possible. And it was during that time when the person who donated most of the drones to us was injured on the front line horrifically, Doves of Freedom, and just a month later, Zafar passed away on the front line. There we go. But this time was different. I already had my revenge for the previous friends who fell, and this new revenge I was going to give was going to be in the form of a handmade flying bomb. So I wiped away the tears after talking to Alex, and we got to work again. Those nights were long. We pushed through failure after failure, range issues, jammers, bad signals, harmonization, interference, but finally we had a working prototype, and I sent it out to the team, and we waited anxiously for a word on if it was successful or not.
It was like 1 meter away from where we were supposed to drop, so...
Perfect, dude. First call we get, success. Arnie had successfully dropped the bomb straight on where the Russians were patrolling. And then another successful bombing, and then another, and another. And I knew that every drop of sweat was worth it. I knew that Zafar, who had died just weeks before, didn't die in vain. I got my revenge quick this time. I didn't sit on it, I worked for it. There's a lot of stuff that happened during this time, as you'd imagine. Jesse was hit by shrapnel while recovering the drone that I shot down. There were missile attacks. I had my first wound from engineering FPVs. I demined the mines I had placed years ago, and even more of my friends passed away. But the motivation to continue the work only became clearer as tragedies happened. I was able to donate to my friends with the ad revenue I accrued on this channel, and you, the fans, completely funded our FPV progress. Matter of fact, I met fans of the channel all around the world, randomly too. In Ukraine constantly, of course, but also after church in Michigan, waiting at the cash register at 7-Eleven in the Philippines, even at the gym in Vietnam. That's when I knew my work was bigger than myself. People had seen me grow up, keeping my integrity higher than the ego which used to control me. I became a true soldier, fighting past the fear and the pain. The war hasn't stopped. I was just in Ukraine a month ago. I was able to train a NATO unit in Poland multiple times. I even brought back one of the drones that I made in Ukraine and then showed it to them and gave it to them. They called it the Bakhmut Bomber. And I keep traveling as well. I go back to the US, I go to Asia, I go to Taiwan to meet up and help engineer drones. Because the fight isn't staying in one place, so neither am I. And I keep telling the story here on YouTube, so nobody forgets why we do this. It's not for money, it's not for clout, it's for every friend who didn't come home. Zafar, Rashid, Fedekar, Jocko, Sharesh, Ethan, Jericho, Tran, Iwa, Ragnar, Chief, Chorney, Dara, and many, many others. Freedom fighting for me isn't a one-time adventure, it is a way of life. The more I produce content, the more I look inward, I find beauty in my own growth as a man. The hard path of life, the ups and downs, the unforgivable mistakes, and the unfathomable redemption. So right here, right now, I remember what that gunny had told me 10 years ago. You haven't made it until you're 6 feet under. Maybe he was right. Maybe none of us truly ever make it. We just keep pushing, we keep learning, we keep building ourselves, right up to our last breath. And that's what makes it worth it.
1, 2, 3.
beat you. I'm gonna beat you.